50 states, one currency, and a constitution that actually works. That's what the architects of the United States sold to the world. A bold experiment in shared sovereignty that became the most powerful economy in history. But here's what they didn't always admit. The dollar only survives because America is a true fiscal and political union with built-in shock absorbers. Without them, the entire system would have torn itself apart long ago. This isn't theory. The warnings were written into the Federalist Papers, tested in the panic of 1837, the Great Depression, and every regional crisis since. The dollar isn't flawless. It's held together by mechanisms Europe deliberately refused to build, and understanding why reveals something uncomfortable about currency unions. To see the danger clearly, go back to 1961, the same year Robert Mundell laid out his theory of optimal currency areas. Mundell asked a simple question: when can a group of regions safely share one currency, without destroying each other during asymmetric shocks? When one area booms while another collapses. His four conditions were non-negotiable: free labor mobility, free capital flows, flexible wages and prices, a central fiscal authority with the power to transfer resources from strong regions to weak ones. America meets these, imperfectly, but enough to survive. When Hurricane Katrina devastated Louisiana, federal dollars flowed automatically. FEMA, unemployment benefits, infrastructure rebuilding, tax relief. When Texas booms on energy while the Rust Belt struggles, capital and workers move. When California faces wildfires or Florida faces hurricanes, the system doesn't force internal devaluation on the victims. Washington steps in as the fiscal backstop. The dollar survives because the United States is not just a monetary union. It is a fiscal union with automatic stabilizers. When one state hurts, the others, through the federal budget, help carry the load. Now contrast that with what happened when Europe tried the same trick without the foundations. In the 1990s, European leaders pushed the euro as a political project to bind the continent and rival American power. They ignored Mundell's checklist. Labor doesn't move easily across language and cultural lines. Of wages are sticky because of powerful unions and political resistance. And crucially, the Maastricht Treaty explicitly banned a real central fiscal authority. No European treasury, no automatic transfers, no shared unemployment insurance. They built a currency union without a fiscal union, a house without foundations, and called it progress. Milton Friedman warned in 1997, just before launch, that the euro would amplify divergences rather than heal them. He predicted one-size-fits-all monetary policy would devastate weaker economies during recessions, while barely touching stronger ones. He was ridiculed. The euro launched in 1999 amid celebration. The mechanical trap was set from day one. Before the euro, countries like Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Ireland paid higher interest rates reflecting their higher risk. Borrowing was expensive, which disciplined spending. The moment they joined the euro, markets treated them as if they were backed by Germany. Interest rates converged to German levels, sometimes as low as 3 to 4%. Suddenly, cheap credit flooded in. What happens when peripheral economies get access to German-level borrowing costs? They borrow massively. Greece funded an oversized public sector and unaudited defense deals. Spain and Ireland fueled historic real estate bubbles. Spain built more homes between 2000 and 2008 than Germany, France, and the UK combined. In a normal country with its own currency, imbalances correct through devaluation. Exports get cheaper, the economy adjusts. In the Eurozone, that escape hatch doesn't exist. You can't devalue. Your only option is internal devaluation. Crushing wages, cutting spending, and forcing austerity until competitiveness returns. It takes decades, not years. The human cost is devastating. Between 2000 and 2008, German unit labor costs stayed flat, while Southern Europe's rose 20 to 30%. The productivity gap widened every year. Southern countries financed the gap with borrowed German money. When the 2008 crisis hit, the imbalances exploded. Greece's hidden deficits were revealed, bond yields spiked, bailouts came. With brutal austerity, the IMF later admitted it had underestimated fiscal multipliers. Cuts destroyed far more GDP than projected. Greece's economy shrank 26% in 5 years. Youth unemployment hit 60%. Suicide rates soared. Hospitals ran out of medicine. The medicine didn't cure the patient. Greece's debt to GDP ratio was higher after years of austerity than before. Destroying output shrinks the denominator faster than you reduce the numerator. The deeper problem is structural. The European Central Bank sets one interest rate for 20 wildly different economies. In 2003, Germany needed low rates to fight stagnation. Ireland and Spain needed higher rates to cool overheating bubbles. The ECB chose one rate, too low for the periphery, only marginally helpful for Germany. In 2011, Spain was collapsing and needed loose policy. Germany was recovering and worried about inflation. The ECB raised rates anyway, following its narrow price stability mandate that ignores unemployment. One central bank, one rate. Divergent realities. The result was predictable pain. America avoids this through federal transfers and the Fed's dual mandate that includes employment. When Texas booms and Michigan struggles, capital and labor move, and Washington smooths the shock. Europe has no such mechanism. When the next asymmetric shock hits, and it will, the same fault lines will reopen. Italy's debt to GDP hovers around 137%. France approaches 115 to 118%. The ECB's balance sheet ballooned dramatically in recent years through bond purchases to suppress yields and prevent honest market pricing of risk. Whatever it takes became permanent policy, not a fix, but a deferral. The euro is now sustained by ever larger central bank interventions and the unspoken assumption that stronger northern economies will eventually backstop the south. This isn't stability, it's managed fragility. The euro was sold as a path to unity and prosperity rivaling America. What it delivered was a system that redistributes competitiveness northward, recycles surpluses as debt, and then forces debtors to pay for creditors' recklessness when the boom ends. The founders hoped monetary union would force political union. It didn't. The bicycle stopped moving forward, yet European institutions doubled down instead of redesigning the frame. They punished the patients for the disease the architecture created. They called extraction rescue and postponement resolution. America's dollar works despite its own flaws, because it rests on a genuine fiscal and political union with shock absorbers. Europe's experiment tried to skip those foundations. The next time someone tells you a monetary union can thrive without fiscal union, without automatic stabilizers, without democratic consent for power transfers, remember the Greek hospitals without insulin, the Spanish construction workers without jobs, and the Italian stagnation that has lasted a generation. Money's power. Currencies are not neutral. They embed incentives and distribute costs. The euro didn't create a United States of Europe. It created a cage, too expensive to leave, too fragile to endure indefinitely, and too politically radioactive to honestly repair. The warnings were there in 1961. They were ignored in 1999. The fuse is still burning. If this changes how you see shared currencies and grand experiments, subscribe. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes in the footnotes.